If you've watched sports on television, and what kind of question is that? Of course, you have watched sports on television. You have seen a production done by Chris Ohlmeyer. He is a co-founder of Ohlmeyer Kusserow Group, and they put golf on television, but they also put other sports on TV as well. And Chris is a director, he is a producer, and he joins me today on the Honest Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, work with different networks, also enjoy calling golf and tennis and other sports. And here we are going to go deep into the journey of Chris Ohlmeyer, how he has forged his own footprint in the industry, how he has separated himself from his father's own legacy, but how he remembers his father and cherishes what he had learned and has learned from him over the course of his life. But beyond work matters, this conversation goes. The upbringing of Chris Ohlmeyer, what he is like as a father, all of those things will be discussed in length here in this conversation. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Here is my chat with Chris. Here he is. Chris is with us. It is hard to find a time when he's not on the road. So getting him at home for a fun conversation is a rarity. So glad to have you, Chris. Had your brother on. Thanks for being a part of this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks for, we've had a couple scheduling snafus to actually get this thing done. So I appreciate you working with the ever evolving schedule.
That is the business we are in. You have to be able to adapt. Nobody does it better than you and your company and all the great work that you are doing. But I was talking to your brother, and he had some inside intel on you. He said when you were growing up, you lived on Cheerios, hamburgers, and spaghetti and capitalized no sauce as if to emphasize no sauce. What went
Yeah,
into your decisions food-wise and coming up with those?
it hasn't changed a whole lot. I've dumped the Cheerios, but I don't know. I always say I have highly attuned taste buds that don't need a whole lot to get them excited. But my mom, again, I was more resourceful. If I didn't like what she was making, I knew I could make spaghetti, Cheerios, or cook a burger. So a lot of times I would, sort of push the food around and then go make my own thing later.
How competitive growing up were you and your brother with one another in whatever you were taking on?
I think a little bit, but not. We played different sports, so he was baseball, and myself and my younger brother were more golfers. So in terms of kind of that head to head, but we played, tackle football in the backyard, and we'd fight over the remote. So we were, we were competitive. I think that's our biggest fight was over. I think it was usually over who got the remote for the TV.
When you won that battle, what are you watching?
Growing up, we watched a lot of sports. We're Ranger fans growing up. I played ice hockey. Again, Drew played basketball. My brother and I, my younger brother Todd and I played steered towards hockey. So again, like I said, we weren't kind of direct competitors. But grew up watching all the kind of classic comedies, the Caddyshack and Animal House. Those movies. We were kids of the '80s, and the VCR was fairly new. I was 12, 13, and that's certainly we watched, and obviously cable had just came out in that time as well.
Your siblings and you growing up, you think about them and being a cheerleader for you in your work endeavors now. How do they show that? How does, talking to Drew, how has he shown that he's a cheerleader for you and vice versa?
Oh, we just, we lived in different parts of the country, so we see each other, hopefully at least once a year, if not more, and then it's on the phone and just sort of picking each other's brain in terms of what's, what we're working on, and I respect him as a producer and what he's done, and certainly, I think he's, was always kind of more creative and really, probably a better student. He really, was a English major, and really, I think his creativity is really, something that I, certainly looked to and, admired, and certainly his input. So, he's been a great sounding board for me.
A lot of what you do is related to the golf course, and you do a lot, namely a lot when it comes to golf broadcasting. When you're on the course yourself and you're playing, how much creativity, you mentioned your brother has that, but how much creativity do you have in terms of your own play out there?
Oh, I don't know. Probably a lot just because I have to be creative where my driver goes a lot of the time. So I think, I certainly, it's certainly my favorite sport and the one, that most people you can continue to play when you're older. Yeah, no, I sometimes am better, I'm not saying I'm like Mickelson, but like Mickelson, sometimes he's better when he's on in the stands and hitting off one foot. And sometimes I find I'm better when I'm hitting out of trouble. And I do get a lot of practice at that.
In growing up and playing a lot of golf, what were those experiences like as a kid with your family and your dad out there playing and those that you savor the most?
I mean, that was, growing up, playing golf with him, my younger brother Todd, that was certainly, a great way for us to connect. With his travel schedule and parents being separated, that was that sport was something that you know got us in the same place for 4 hours, 5 hours. So and that isn't always the case with parents and kids as they get older. So I think that was it certainly was a unifying thing for us and always allowed us, whether we had something to say or not, we could be together, and usually whatever was going on, it sort of got discussed out there. It's again, it's a fun game, and you're always learning. But the fact that you can be with family is certainly special.
How funny was your dad on the golf course?
Oh, he's yeah, he was he was pretty funny. He had a he was a really good player, great short game. His swing was very unusual. I think Gary McCord one time when he played at Pebble Beach, did a swing analysis of him, and the telestrator had arrows going everywhere. As okay, his foot's going here, and but again, he was a 4 to 5 handicap most of his life, and was down to I think 2 at one point, and depending on how busy he is, the number floated back and forth. But he was certainly, I would say, more creative, and if I learned creativity in the golf course, it was from him. He was he had all the all these expressions. I could get up and down from a locked suitcase and different things, like that, because he, Mandrake the magician is what he used to occasionally call himself. So certainly, it was always fun playing with him, and he had plenty of people, lined up to play with him because he was a lot of fun.
What you learned from him obviously is a big part of who you are today, but at the same time, you have found your own footprint. You have created your own identity in this business. How have you done that while taking what you have learned from family, but at the same time, carving your own niche, doing your own thing, and finding yourself through that process?
That's a good question. I mean, again, I tried to always, I took a lot of lessons from him. Both good and good and bad, sort of where he felt like he, you know, I don't know, made mistakes, but I knew what was sort of weighed on him when he had his company. I think the fact that it got too big because of how much he cared about people and how not wanting to he felt responsible for all the people on his business. I really feel like he ended up shutting down his business, selling it off to ESPN, and moving to taking the job at NBC because it felt like it was almost like a weight that he just, felt so much responsibility for those people. So, I feel like, certainly I feel responsible for whenever we're doing a show, but we've kept our company small. And, and I think as busy as we are, want to make sure that when we started this company, it was really Lou Kusserow and myself. It was trying to find a way to make sure we could watch our kids grow up, and not always have to be on the road in order to cash a check, and it's being in the golf business, I can't, the grind of that and the people that are, that do that week in and week out. I did it for about 12 years where you're gone for 7 days. You travel on Monday, you luckily you get home Sunday. CBS, sometimes they're gone, 8, 9, 10 weeks in a row. I can't even, never had that working at ESPN when we had a more full golf package. But, I think, that sort of balance, was what I took away from him, and the responsibility for people. And I think, he always would say, um, take care of your people, they'll take care of you. I'm getting a little emotional talking about him, but, that's what he was about. He was a grinder. He would yell at you. He would scream. He was sort of a maniac in the truck, but people would work for him because he knew that they cared about him. I mean, that he cared about them, and that, um, that he would do whatever, whatever it took for the show. The show was most important, but he wanted to make sure, that he got the best out of them, and that they appreciated that he appreciated what they brought to the table.
How much to this day are you thinking about your dad?
Hmm. I mean, quite a bit. I mean, it he's been gone, 5.5 years. Um, but when I'm doing shows, and Lou and I are talking and we're trying to plan things out, I'm certainly thinking, what would he, what would he do? What would, sort of, have those conversations in terms of, you know, how to figure something out. I mean, that's, I think the kind of joy we get, with our sort of niche in this business is we do a lot of figuring. People come to us with, "Hey, can you figure out how to do fencing, on this budget?" Or, we do a whole lot of different sports, and, or like, "Hey, let's figure out how to do golf differently," and, went back in the 80s, he kind of figured out how to do golf differently with, when they did the Champions Tour, Senior Tour back then. Now we're trying to figure out how to do it with bonded cell technology, and how do we sort of fit these budgets where, again, the college conferences don't have, they don't all have a ton of money to spend, particularly in golf, where it's not a, major revenue, driver. So it's trying to figure out how can we do a quality show, that looks like, if you're watching, you're peeking in, that isn't immediately, "Oh, geez, this is, like a local news broadcast," but, so that's kind of the joy of figuring out how to put the most money on the screen, still make a living, but, make quality products for, quality productions, by being creative in terms of how you're doing it.
To
I don't know if I
you,
answered that
no,
question
you
there. I kind of
did,
got
you
it.
did. You mentioned quality a few times in that response. What does quality work look like for you?
Um, I think it starts with people. The reason we can do as much work as we can is the people that we hire, that we trust, and getting those folks, all on the same page in terms of what is our expectation. I mean, ultimately, what we want to do is deliver the best product we can for the budget, and whether that means sometimes, making less money, that's, but we've always sort of tried to let the money work itself out and just do quality product. And, I think we talked before we get on, we've spent no money on advertising ourselves or anything like that, other than, keeping a web page that certainly isn't up to date, out there, so people can find us. But, try to let the work do the talking, and, to make sure that if somebody hires us, they know we're not going to put on a show that's not quality. And I think that's where, um, we've done well and have clients that trust us, and they say, "Okay, hey, we've got a show. Let's call Lou and Chris.
Yeah.
Let's put them on," because they're not going to settle for less. We've got our name on our, it's Ohlmeyer Kusserow Group. Our names are on the, the letterhead, and we don't want, anybody to associate that with anything other than we're going to do, the best job for the budget. Doesn't mean we're going to be able to do what, somebody does if they've got twice as much money, but, we feel pretty confident that, given the same amount of money, we're going to put on the best show, for our clients.
Putting on the best job, which you have done, and you obviously, as you said, your work speaks for yourself. What about the job of being a dad is most fun to you?
Hmm. Um, Gosh, I didn't realize we were we were going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a softie, so
That's
you know,
okay.
I think it's just watching them, you know, watching them have fun, watching them grow, watching them learn. My son's is in communications in college, and he's working for us and really enjoying it and just watching his sort of passion for it. I think that's where as anybody, you just sort of get the enjoyment out of them being their own person.
In a family get together. Like, so you have a trip and then everybody gets together. And we're talking beforehand about you all going to the lake and those experiences. You in your element with your family in those fun excursions. What does that look like?
Um, I don't know. I kind of like to let them you know, them kind of lead the way in terms of what we're doing, and I think I'm not the one who's getting people out of bed and sort of screaming, "We got to go, we got to go." Sometimes I may want to do that, but um, I think it's facilitating them having fun. That's what it's. You asked about being a dad. That's what it's about. Facilitating them having fun, being successful, and growing up and doing what you can to to make them grow into the people, grow into themselves, not try to make them, I never tried to push them towards, maybe I pushed him a little bit to golf, wanting him to play and really just wanted him to learn the basics so that he wasn't going to come to
Yeah.
me at 23 like my brother did to my dad, sort of like, why didn't you push me
Yeah.
to play more when he sort of didn't take to it. It's almost like piano lessons or whatever. So, but for the TV side and that he kind of gravitated towards it. His high school here in Texas, there everything's about football and they put on their high school puts on all the football games live. And so he was involved in running camera and learned sort of the business there, and now is in college and involved at Elon University doing production there. And he's gotten direct baseball and football and run camera and run EVS and or they're out of Mira there what they run their tape replay and and really it's fun to watch him progress there and what questions he has and sort of ideas he has and how how he views things differently. I mean, it's amazing to to sort of watch kids and know as things are evolving in the business and sort of realizing it's like, wow, I think he might actually be one of the few kids that would buy a cable subscription just because of all the things, but probably not because he's watching it on the phone. But just sort of seeing sort of that different generation, but somebody who's dipping his toe into production and there's so many kids that are doing that now because every SEC school and
Yeah.
ACC school all have those control rooms, and I'm getting to work quite a bit with them over the last 10 years since SEC Network and then ACC Network and to see all this young talent and all the opportunities that I think we maybe took out a VHS and recorded flag football with a couple cameras and tried to edit something together at Notre Dame when I was there, but we didn't have any of the opportunities to get that experience, to get those reps that the younger kids in college and just out of that have had that opportunity. And again, lots of them don't want to be in the business, but even just having that experience, it sort of gives them an idea. And some may have thought they wanted to get into production and get through there, and they're sort of finding out, maybe they don't want to. But others are getting that opportunity and they're coming out and and sort of having that head start over where everybody else people my age where we started, where you just came in as a runner or a PA and sort of learned learned on the job. But there's so much work that you can't wait, that somebody's got to get in there and learn. And usually you're a freshman and you're thrown into camera and you're sort of the ones that excel are moving up and being a TD and then directing. And I think it's it's pretty exciting to see that, and certainly see see Ben do that on his own, on his own, and off in North Carolina, 18 hours away. It's been, it's fun to watch from afar. And again, we've occasionally get there and, ACC country and be able to, stop by and see him, or, again, have him come, and help us on a show that we're doing, where he'll, there's so many, obviously, schools in that, North Carolina area. So we've done stuff at UNC and Duke where he's come and helped us. So it's, it's pretty neat to see him.
The work that he's done for you speaks for itself, but the work that you put in to introduce him to golf, what was your tactic, your strategy, the way in which you approached golf to get your son to at least try it in the way that you got him to the sport and led him to wanting to be there and to coach him a little bit?
I think, again, I wanted to just expose him to it. Certainly when he was young enough that he was really, before he was knowing about it, we had, clubs in his hand and going, between, my dad and my mother and stepdad and in-laws, everybody played golf. So it's when we're going to visit grandparents, that was, one of the things we did, and he wanted to drive the cart and come along. And so, I think as I said earlier, my basic feeling was just get him exposed and try to get him the basics, make it fun, and like anybody with golf, it's sort of that balance of keeping it fun and wanting to get better, and sort of trying to pick and choose. And when it seemed like he was gonna play more, try to get a coach and sort of step back and not not get in the way and not be the one who's sort of nitpicking the swing or saying, oh, do this or do that, or trying to follow that order, just so we didn't have that combative nature. And certainly fathers and sons, that will happen, or the father, all they want is for them to do better, and whether or not what they're saying. And so I always was cautious, I guess, a little bit, of trying to get too involved, but certainly guilty as charged many times of trying to say, hey, we'll just do this, or hey, this is what I'm seeing. And again, we went and hit balls the other day, and we were talking, and he had played through middle school and then didn't play in high school, switched over to do the tech stuff, but kind of found it again in college, playing with friends. And I remember just saying, hey, I'm trying not to say anything. I'm trying to just let it be fun, but yet listening to him and having him sort of discover on his own. And we've taken lessons from the same person here, so kind of know what that coach is saying. And so we've sort of had a nice nice balance. And again, I feel like I'm just wanting to try and just keep it fun.
I hear your relationship with your kids, and I feel like you've become this awesome teddy bear of a dad. How did you come to be that teddy bear like self?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they would call me a teddy bear. I sometimes have a short fuse, but I don't know. I think it's especially traveling as much, wanting to make sure that the time at home, and again, I don't travel as much as I used to, but actually I'm busier at home, since we started this company. But I think it's it's trying to make those connections and make sure that we're trying to just support them and let them be who they are. And again, it's interesting, my daughter's doing her driving and I'm the driving instructor, so I'm using a lot of the same sort of ideas from when Ben was starting to play golf and sort of that, and trying to, obviously you have to be a little more stern when when a car is when we're driving a vehicle that could crash. But again, she's I think we've done it in a way where we're communicating well, and and it's never been combative. And I think it's it's certainly a strategy of mine, is to try to figure out ways to do it where we're just giving the information. And but again, it's also we're we're stuck in the car for an hour, and it's great because, we're, mostly talking driving, but also, I'll go back to talking about golf. We're in the same, we're stuck in the same place, but there's no pressure to keep the conversation going, and it just lets it be natural. And, that's where I think, a lot of those great moments happen when you're not really trying.
I want to leave you with this last question. The moment you held and became a dad for the first time.
You're just trying to get me to full on cry.
Well, this is funny because your brother, when he came on, he was like, all right, Bryan, is this your Dr. Phil moment? No, I mean, I love the depth of having these conversations, and I guess for me, it comes from losing my dad when I was young. And so for me, it's cathartic to hear a father's love for his kids. And so that moment when you became a dad, if I were to see you that day, what would you have been like?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, certainly happy, but I would say, I think I was, it was obviously those were two of the best days. Both of them, I was working, ESPN still had golf and was working full time producing. So Ben was when ESPN had the Hawaii swing. So we were over there and ended up coming back, and he was born. Basically, I worked the first week knowing that we'd sort of have a week buffer before his due date. Came back and he was born. I believe it was the Saturday of the Hawaiian Open. And certainly, it was, great day in terms of, but a daunting, I think more, I was certainly happy, and I was, a lot of times I'll deflect with humor, and I'm sure I was deflecting a lot with humor and driving people nuts. But, that was a great day to know, know we had a son. And then Charlotte, I was in Vancouver for the Canadian Open, and Julie called, and I came home thinking that Charlotte was, hoping I'd get there in time, and ended up she didn't end up coming for like nine more days. So sort of a false alarm, but again, it was it's great to have one of each, and sort of see the different the differences between boys and girls, and having having that different connection with each, which, I wouldn't, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it's just sort of, there's, as everybody knows, I mean, well, anybody that has a boy and a girl know that, that those connections, are great, and I don't want to go, I'm resisting going too deep. So
I can tell, and that's okay. And I want you to be comfortable. Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade him for the world.
Well, they certainly would feel the same way about you, as is this industry that we're in, and how lucky we are to have you and your company and all the amazing work that you've put together. And the fact is that even beyond the work that you do, as you said earlier in this conversation, it's the care that you have for your employees and the people. That's important for you, that family atmosphere. And I can feel that. And I see how much that translates between your actual family, but then there's that family in work as well. And you were able to open up in a beautiful way, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Chris.
no, I mean, it is, there's a family. I've got tons of older brothers and sisters that sort of raised me, in the business, and I have plenty of younger brothers and sisters that I look out for.
Yeah. You look out,
it's definitely there's definitely a family. You're gone too much not to, I mean, it's, you think you've got high school friends and college friends, and and we're lucky enough, and people have work friends, and but those, and I'm still in touch with my high school friends and my college friends, and I feel lucky to have, those connections, but then also to have, people too that I haven't seen, some that I haven't seen in 15 years. that if they called me on the phone, that we would pick up, right there, because we started the business together and sort of had that, that relationship sort of, I always look at college, my Notre Dame experience, that you made these friendships because the winters were hard and there was all these extra rules that other colleges didn't have. And so you sort of had a, not necessarily an us against them mentality, but it was just sort of a great place to, to sort of incubate friendships.
You've got many of them. Grateful to have you on. Thanks for going those places that we were able to underline, not just you as a worker, but as a dad. That's the personal side is really wanted to hit on. And I appreciate you going that way with me.
No, I appreciate you. Drew speaks so highly of you. And so I said, all right, if Drew says I should do it, I'll go ahead and do it. And I wasn't quite sure where you were going, but but I'm happy to have sort of gone on the journey with you, and really appreciate the time, and have enjoyed it.